So I love the idea of combining music with perfumes or fragrances inspired by different musicians, bands, genres, instruments, and so on. And that's exactly what I've got for you today. L'Orchestre Parfum. Are you familiar with this house? The brand is now sold over at ZGO Perfumery, a local perfume shop. If you're local, nearby, or visiting San Francisco, definitely stop by and check out the brand L'Orchestre Parfum and tell them Sebastian sent you. But today I'm talking about 4 different L'Orchestre Parfum fragrances. We've got an incense fragrance, we've got an amber fragrance, we've got a vetiver fragrance, and a milky sandalwood fragrance. So if you're curious to discover L'Orchestre Parfums, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's Sebastian. We're talking about L'Orchestre Parfum. Are you familiar with this house? Do you like the idea of fragrances inspired by music? Let me know. Put a comment down below so I can find out. And yes, the fragrances are now sold over at ZGO Perfumery. And there is a discount code in the info box. You can use that on these fragrances or any fragrances in the store with some brand exceptions. So double check to make sure if you can discount some of the fragrances, but definitely on these you can. I first discovered L'Orchestre Parfum back in 2018. I know the man behind the brand. Again, as I said, I've always loved the idea of combining fragrances, music, or fragrances inspired by music. So I've been a fan of this house and I've mentioned them here and there, but never done a full video until now. So I'm excited and I hope you're excited as well. So as I said, we have an incense fragrance, we have an amber fragrance, a vetiver fragrance, and then a sandalwood fragrance. And we're going to start out with the incense fragrance. And I'm doing this in the year of release. So we're going with the oldest release here in between the 4 fragrances, which is Encens Asakusa. And the newest release will be the last fragrance I'm going to talk to you about. So this is L'Orchestre Parfum Encens Asakusa, created by perfumers Amélie Bourgeois and Anne-Sophie Behaghel, launched in 2017. This is inspired by Fumie Hihara, a Koto instrument musician, and the Koto instrument is from Japan. I can see this inspiration. I don't know much about the instrument itself, but I can see this incense inspiration for this musician, especially since I spent some time in Kyoto recently and walking over in that city, I noticed there was a lot of different incense stores and shops, and I brought back a bunch of incense from there. So this fragrance does fit this particular inspiration to me. So Encens Asakusa has notes of Olibanum incense, white musk, iris, myrrh, violet, cypress, and pink berries. And most likely the pink berries are referring to the pink pepper. And I feel like pink pepper, pink berries will be a great addition to the enhancement of the smell of the Olibanum incense. Because for me, I've mentioned that Olibanum incense has a peppery quality about it. And then pink pepper, black pepper has a bit of smokiness. So they will really help one another and amplify that smell, which is exactly what happens here. But it's quite musky. There's definitely that white musk idea. It has a cleanness. But iris and violet also contributes to a major powdery effect here. There's definitely a powdery quality about this one, along with its resinous incense qualities. But the myrrh comes in, does sweeten it up a little bit, adds a bit more, not powdery, but incense qualities, because myrrh is a resin. It's a bit of a sweet resin. And then, of course, the cypress contributes to a bit of green aromatic, earthy, kind of a woody smell. But it's a really gorgeous incense fragrance. It's not really quite overwhelming. It just smells really, really present. It's resinous, it's smoky, it's incense for sure. There's a bit ambery touches, spices galore, and then of course the powdery touches as well. Really wonderfully done. It doesn't remind me of fragrances like Casbah, and then it does. It doesn't remind me of fragrances like Avignon, but then it does. There's something about this that has enough sweetness to kind of like set it apart from those 2 fragrances, where I find those to be more about the incense, resin, and smoke. This one has that sweetness, and I think the myrrh is contributing to a nice, wonderful sweetness with this fragrance. It wears really pleasant. Again, very smoky, incensey, very resinous, balsamic, and also powdery. There's definitely a major powdery component here. Also the sweetness and the ambery touches when it's drying down. Really wonderful fragrance for incense lovers. I should also say there's Baby Cat and Vanagloria. Those are 2 fragrances that I've been obsessed with quite a bit. It's combining vanilla with incense, and also there's the leather note or the suede leather note that comes in. Whereas the incense in here might remind you of the incense in that, but this doesn't have a vanilla quality about it. It also doesn't have a leatheriness about it. So there's that difference going for it. But I quite enjoyed this fragrance because it has enough sweetness to kind of like, set it apart from just going full on incense and church smell rather than having this sweetness that comes in. And I think the myrrh in here creates that. And one last thing I should say is the myrrh creates a bit of fizziness. There's definitely a bit of fizzy effervescence running throughout the fragrance, which also contributes to making it a bit more enjoyable to wear rather than just wearing a fragrance that smells like church kind of a thing. So let's go ahead and smell Encens Asakusa also to let you know a little bit more about it. Let me know if you're familiar with this fragrance and what your thoughts are on this. Yeah, it definitely, there's a major sparkling effervescence, and myrrh does that in fragrances once in a while. It kind of has a bit of a Coca-Cola-esque vibe here. The fizziness, the effervescence, as I was saying, but it's lots of incense for sure, lots of powder, and then it's a bit of sweetness, sweet ambery resin, balsamic touches. Really great fragrance. And again, I've been enjoying the fragrances of Amélie Bourgeois and Anne-Sophie Behaghel. Everything they do turns out mostly really good. And they've done a great job here for Encens Asakusa. And I have one more fragrance with the two of them as well. The last fragrance I'm going to talk to you about as well. So they've done two of the fragrances in the four that I'm talking about today. So next up, we've got a fragrance called Piano Santal. This is a fragrance I have spoken about here and there on the channel. It's a very creamy, milky sandalwood fragrance created by Jacques. Jacques is now the perfumer at Caron. He's created fragrances like Tabac Exquis that I've been talking about. And this is a really, really great, creamy sandalwood. If you're into the idea of these smooth, creamy, musky, very lactonic sandalwood fragrances, which I'm obsessed with, those are the kind of sandalwood fragrances I like. And I'm not a big fan of fragrances like Santal 33 because it's that more crunchy, shavings of wood and pickle juice kind of combo. This stuff will satisfy if you like the creamy stuff. Again, this is created by Jacques, launched in 2019. This is inspired by Edouard Ferlet, a pianist. Obviously, it's called Piano Santal, and that's the inspiration. The notes are white sandalwood, warm milk, heated skin, white musks, caraway, ambroxan, cedarwood, bergamot. What are your thoughts on this one? It has caraway, so that's a little bit of a spice like cumin, but it doesn't have that ultra pungent quality that cumin does. It kind of has that similar spiciness though. But for me, this is mostly about the white sandalwood with the warm milk and perhaps the heated skin. What does that mean, heated skin? This is taken off of the brand's website. I'm assuming they're talking about warm skin. Yeah, warm skin does have a smell, and I feel like they've captured it here. Maybe perhaps it does have some light muskiness about it, more of a skin musk rather than anything animalic, but it does come in for sure and creates a very interesting composition. It's definitely very woody, for sure very woody, and also milky. Milky lactonic is definitely the style of this fragrance, and it's very, very prominent. In fact, sandalwood in general does go milky. I mentioned it quite a bit. I enjoy this kind of sandalwood, but here they've amped it up with more milk. So it really has a very milky effect. And then there's other woods and the spices come in, of course. Some light citrusy touches, but nothing over the top. And it's just a very nice, very relaxing and soothing, sandalwood fragrance called Piano Santal. Let's go ahead and smell it, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about this. Let me know if you're a fan of it. I know this one has fans out there. I hear it all the time in comments. So let me know if you're one of the folks that likes Piano Santal. And if you're nearby and you want to check out these fragrances, head over to ZGO Perfumery as they are sold there now. Really, really great stuff. This is wonderful. Really, really creamy and also very powdery. There's major powdery touch about this one. And I think milk in general does create, and musk also, because this one has musks, does create a powdery effect. This one's very, very powdery, but it's almost like a very smooth, creamy powder that you're spritzing on something, and then you can get this creamy effect about it, and then also the powdery effect about it as well. Cream and powder kind of are not the same, but just imagine maybe powdered milk. I don't know if you guys ever have smelled or, held and touched powdered milk, and that's kind of what I'm getting with this one. But it's so cozy, so delicious. The milk just amplifies the milkiness in this woody fragrance, and creates for a really, really wonderful wear. This is the kind of fragrance, if you are fine with it, I would spritz to go to bed with, because it's just going to relax you and soothe you, and you're going to fall asleep and have really wonderful dreams. Maybe you're going to dream about floating in milk or something. Really, really great stuff. That's definitely a really great fragrance, and I've been enjoying Jean-Jacques' creations for Caron, and this is definitely really one of the great ones that he's created for the House of L'Orchestre Parfum. Next up, we are talking about Ambre Cello, this one right here. And Ambre Cello launched in 2021 at the height of the pandemic, created by Pierre-Constantin Guerreros. And this is a fragrance inspired by Javier Martinez Campos and Gautier Capuchan or Capuchan. They're both cellists. That's why this is called Ambre Cello. And according to the notes, there's elegant bergamot, lustrous benzoin, mellow tonka, mysterious myrrh, soulful vanilla, and clear balms. All the notes are taken off of the website of L'Orchestre Parfums, and this is how they list them. They've kind of gone a little descriptive with the actual notes in this particular fragrance versus the others. So this is a very citrusy take on amber. Do you like amber? Do you think amber can be too heavy, too resinous, too balsamic, too intense, too spicy? This one has enough citruses to balance it out to make it an easier, more approachable kind of amber. In the end, it is amber. There's lots of amber here. Resins, balsams, all are in here to create a resinous, balsamic amber experience. But there's also enough citruses here to freshen everything up and not make it uber warm. Because amber, balsams, resins are all very warm notes. Citruses are fresh notes. So you're balancing it out with fresh and warmth at the same time. But you have the tonka, you have the vanilla in here as well, both adding to the warmth of the fragrance. But there's a lot of bergamot in this to give you enough of a citrus edge to give it a nice balance, you know? It's a really nice fresh amber, eventually gets warm. I wouldn't say this is something like Ambra Calabria from the House of Nichane, which is all very fresh. This one eventually does get warm. It'll settle to warmth because it's got the myrrh and it's got that benzoin, both of them resins, sweet resins, along with the vanilla and the balms or the balsams that they have in here, creating for a very ambery experience. But up top, we've got a lot of freshness. And that's what I like about this particular fragrance, that it's fresh and then warm after it settles a bit. So let's go ahead and spritz a little bit of Ambre Cello. What are your thoughts about these fragrances so far? Do they sound great to you? Are you familiar with Pierre-Constantin Guerreros? He works at Symrise. He's a perfumer at Symrise. Again, it's amber. It's very resinous. It's got sweetness. It's powdery. It's warm. It's vanillic, balsamic, resinous, as I said. But there's this freshness around it. That freshness is actually making it not so heavy and dense. Some ambers can be heavy and dense, but there's enough juicy citruses up top. It's fresh. It's fresh when it's first spritzed, and then you're getting deeper and deeper and deeper. Really wonderful. I think this one, where if ambers are considered more like winter fragrances, this one is autumn, spring, and perhaps even on a cooler summer day as well, if you have rules about fragrances. But this is not like, let's say, Maître Parfumeur Gantier's Ambre Presso, which is really intense, even Ambre Mythique, which is even much heavier than that. This does have major freshness for sure. And last but not least, we've got Vetiver Overdrive. And once again, this is a fragrance created by both perfumers Amélie Bourgeois and Anne-Sophie Behaghel over at Flair. This is a 2022 launch. This is music Justin Johnson roots blues guitar inspired. Do I see the connection? Unfortunately, none of these genres of music are my favorite genres, so I can't see the inspiration as much as I wanted to. I can see Vetiver being an inspiration for, blues guitar. What do you guys think? So this has vetiver, ambroxan, bergamot, geranium, cedar, and musk. This is also a very fresh take on vetiver. It's not as deep and rooty as vetiver can get. So the idea of a fresh vetiver is nice. Recently, I spoke about these primers, enhancers, and boosters, and one of them was a bergamot primer or enhancer. And I was mentioning if you want to intensify or make like a vetiver fragrance a citrusy, I would see that kind of a thing added to this one as well to give it more of a citrusy edge. It does have plenty of citruses. I feel like the bergamot is pretty prominent, but you can even amplify it more. But as a fragrance on its own, I enjoyed this one quite a bit. It's very easy to wear for vetiver. Vetiver can get very rooty, earthy a lot, but there's enough freshness here to give it more of a fresh edge. So if you're into the idea of vetiver, but you think it just is very, very earthy, very rooty, very kind of damp and soily kind of, because it can get to smell like that. It's a woody note, by the way. It has grassy characteristics and all the other ones that as I mentioned, but this one makes for a very easy wear vetiver. Really wonderful offering. I guess maybe it might hint at other vetiver fragrances out there, but they don't get too close to them. I feel like it's original because it's fresh enough with the actual bergamot that's in here to give it a very fresh edge. If you're a fan of this one, do let me know. Let's go ahead and quickly smell this one as well. Yeah, the vetiver's there, but there's enough freshness there for sure. There's aromatics here as well. Aromatics as in herbs. The geranium is pretty prominent. It does stand out. Really does kind of contribute to the vetiver that's in here along with the bergamot. There's enough musk in the base and the ambroxan as well to give it a nice longevity to the fragrance, but I wouldn't call this a screamer. It's a bit subdued compared to other fragrances and the rest of the collection that I spoke to you about. So for a vetiver, it's an easy wear vetiver. And if you want to amplify it with the boosting of the fragrance with some citruses, I think you can layer this with a citrusy fragrance as well. But for me, on its own, I would call this an everyday wear, a signature scent kind of a fragrance, because it's the kind of fragrance you can wear to office spaces and things like that. It's very pleasant and inviting and also crowd pleasing for sure. So that is Vetiver Overdrive from the house of L'Orchestre Parfums. Do let me know what your thoughts are on these fragrances. Again, they are sold at ZGO Perfumery now. Thankfully, they're adding new fragrances and new houses we can all go check out if you're local here to San Francisco. And yeah, go check them out. And then if you're not local, take advantage of the discount code in the info box. There's definitely a discount code you can use on these fragrances and many other brands over at their store. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, list below. Please like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.